I mean, it's not my first time being an opponent in Boston. You know, I'm just looking forward to competing with my teammates, and you know, hopefully we can just keep it strictly basketball.
Playing part-time, now full-time.
You know, there's no belligerence or any racism going on, subtle racism and people yelling in the crowd. But even if it is, it's part of the nature of the game, and we're just gonna focus on what we can control.
And the middle finger salute to one of the fans. He'll get fined for that.
It is what it is.
My favorite day of the week, aside from the trade deadline, aside from a very loaded free agency class, is always the Saturday where all the first games of the NBA playoffs are played. And then the Sunday following it, you just get to sit on your couch for hours and hours and just consume the highest level of basketball possible. And it's even better whenever you see a superstar take on a villain role. And in the case of Kyrie Irving, we've seen this exact same situation before. So let me know in the comment section down below if there are any other games you want me to break down. And now that we get all that out of the way, cue the intro. I'm not a big fan of traditional banks. They charge $35 for overdraft fees. They charge you fees for having a checking and savings account, and they don't give you cash back on debit card purchases. On top of that, most banks don't really care if you make or lose money, which is why I partnered with Albert. Albert is free to sign up for and easy to use. Instead of just opening a traditional savings account and hoping you put money into it, Albert looks at your income and expenses to see what money you can save. The best part is they give 5 to 20% cash back on retailers like Walmart, Starbucks, and McDonald's. Probably the most important feature of Albert is Genius. Albert has a team of financial experts called Geniuses that will look at your situation and help you make a plan if you get stuck. And for a limited time, when you click my link in the description down below, open up an account and submit a qualifying direct deposit, you'll get $150 just like that. That's an easy $150 to make, and thank you, Albert, for today's sponsor. Mic check 1 2 1 2. What's going on, everybody? 5 years ago, Kyrie Irving sent shockwaves throughout the NBA after a fruitful partnership with LeBron James, and of course rumors about LeBron James potentially wanting to leave the Cleveland Cavaliers. Kyrie Irving decided to demand a trade, which was seen as a gigantic shock to most teams because the Cleveland Cavaliers were the team to beat in the Eastern Conference. At the time, Kyrie Irving cited his reasons as being that he wanted his own team to be the leader of. As a result, the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Boston Celtics made a huge trade because the Cleveland Cavaliers essentially traded their franchise cornerstone for the Boston Celtics' supposed MVP candidate, trading Kyrie Irving to the Boston Celtics for Jay Crowder, Isaiah Thomas, and a future draft pick that would turn into Colin Sexton. Ultimately, this is referred to as a trade that absolutely nobody won. Isaiah Thomas has been struggling ever since, unfortunately. Many people like to hate on the Boston Celtics for this trade as they sold high on Isaiah Thomas's value after a hip injury, and they received a potential franchise cornerstone that they could build around for the future. Things were looking bright for the Boston Celtics. I mean, you had Jaylen Brown, who was starting to develop after 1 year in the NBA, and then you just went into an offseason where you acquired Kyrie Irving and pretty much finessed the Philadelphia 76ers to trade up for the #1 overall pick before trading back to the 3rd pick and selecting Jason Tatum, which in my opinion, and I think in everyone's opinion, was the best player out of the top 3 in the 2017 NBA draft. But unfortunately, what would happen next was very surprising. Kyrie Irving would play in his first year with the Boston Celtics before undergoing a season-ending injury. Despite this, the Boston Celtics still had tremendous results. I mean, without their star player, they were able to go all the way to the Eastern Conference Finals and lost in a Game 7 against Kyrie Irving's former team, the Cleveland Cavaliers. One of my biggest what-ifs is I really wish Kyrie Irving could have somehow came back for this game. Just imagine the drama between Kyrie Irving and LeBron James. How would Cleveland Cavaliers fans feel during this entire series? I mean, Kyrie Irving was a huge part, an instrumental part in winning you a NBA championship, but at the same time, the Boston Celtics seem to have been doing okay without Kyrie, at least in the interim. The very following year, when Kyrie Irving would come back, things seemed a little bit off. Kyrie Irving's contract was set to expire, and everyone thought, at least in Boston in the beginning of the year, that Kyrie had everything that he would possibly want. He had a loaded team that looked very promising for the future, which he was essentially the face of. He had a brilliant head coach, he had a general manager that was willing to gamble and make ballsy moves. He was playing for a storied and historic franchise in Boston, so as a result, you saw Kyrie Irving reaffirming his commitment to the Boston Celtics, saying this.
Appreciate that, Scout. I joined in, but I shared it with some of my teammates as well as the organization and everyone else in Boston. If you guys will have me back, I plan on re-signing here next year.
Boom!
And this is where things get a little murky, because Kyrie Irving decided that he did not want to play for the Boston Celtics by the end of that season. He wanted to be close to family, he wanted to start a team with Kevin Durant, whatever the reason was. He said that he wanted to sign with Boston, and he ultimately decided to sign with the Brooklyn Nets. Ultimately, do I hate on the Boston Celtics for trading for Kyrie Irving to begin with? No, because I feel like if Isaiah Thomas was to come back anyways, he was still going to be dealing with injuries, he was still going to get exposed. It was a perfect time to trade him. As unfortunate as it is, this is a business, and that was the move that you needed to make in order to make sure that your team was going to be good for years to come. What were the odds that Kyrie Irving was going to move back to Brooklyn anyways? I don't really know. So Kyrie Irving would then join the Brooklyn Nets after waiting for Kevin Durant to fully recover for a year. Kyrie Irving would then face off against his former Boston Celtics team in the NBA playoffs. Now, this is where things would get very interesting, and this is where the history between Kyrie Irving and Boston Celtics fans would come out, because Kyrie Irving was clearly not very liked or forgiven by Boston Celtics fans for deciding to leave when he reaffirmed his commitment to Boston. So this all started when Kyrie Irving took to TD Garden. A Boston Celtic fan threw a water bottle at Kyrie Irving as he exited the arena. This is what started the rivalry between Kyrie Irving and the TD Garden. Kyrie would then stomp on the Boston Celtics logo after a Game 4 win, which drew the ire of many Boston Celtics fans and Glenn Big Baby Davis, who went ahead and reacted to this by clowning on Kyrie Irving for suffering an injury that took him out for the rest of the playoffs.
Everybody mad at me because Kyrie Irving stepped on Lucky and Lucky got his get back. Don't get mad at me because Lucky got his get back. I didn't say nothing. You know what I'm saying? Karma is a motherfucker.
So after Glenn Davis pretty much called Kyrie Irving's injury karma for him stomping on the Boston Celtics mascot, we didn't really hear much about this until we found out that it was going to be the Boston Celtics versus the Brooklyn Nets in the first round of this year's NBA playoffs. Now, this started out in a very classy manner. I mean, Kyrie Irving came in and was trying to be as cordial as he possibly could. And I hope we can move past the Boston era and reflect on some of the highlights I left at TD Garden. And ultimately, I think we could say yesterday that isn't what ended up happening. I mean, Kyrie Irving gave us one of the most masterful fourth quarter performances that we've ever seen, scoring 18 points, and at a specific point, the Nets went on an 8-0 run as a result of just Kyrie Irving scoring all 8 of those points. The result of this was Kyrie Irving versus the TD Garden being one of the most entertaining storylines of the entire weekend. I mean, I am just rewatching highlights of this particular game because you're hearing Boston Garden go at Kyrie Irving. You're seeing Kyrie Irving using that as fuel to put together an 18-point fourth quarter. Yes, he did flip off the crowd multiple times and in a variety of ways. And there was a point where he was like doing a little crying face and making fun of the Boston Garden as well, which I think is what the NBA has been missing, man. Honestly, I love seeing fans boo a player. And obviously, it doesn't go to a place where they're disrespecting him racially or anything of that sort. But I love seeing players do stuff like this. I mean, obviously, if someone is just telling Kyrie Irving, you suck, and Kyrie Irving is giving that response back to that fan, which, by the way, I think the fan totally, it's within his rights to say that Kyrie Irving sucks. I think it's even greater that Kyrie Irving is answering back at the fan, telling him to suck my dick. Just watching the performance that came out of it, knowing Kyrie Irving is probably going to get a fine, but he doesn't care because he just despises Boston Garden that much, and Boston Garden despises Kyrie that much. It kind of brings me me back to the way basketball was in the 80s. I don't know if it's the fact that I've been watching Winning Time and, you know, TD Garden seems very, very hostile during the Showtime Lakers era. I just sort of got flashbacks to that moment, and I just think it's fantastic, especially in the NBA playoffs. I love seeing fans go at a player, and I love seeing the player clap back by putting together a remarkable performance. Kyrie Irving would give his reasoning as to why he said what he said during the post-game interview.
We're the ones expected to be docile and be humble and take a humble approach. Nah, it's the playoffs. This is what it is. You know, I know what to expect in here, and it's the same energy I'm giving back to them. It is what it is. I'm not really focused on it. It's fun. You know what I'm saying? And
But ultimately, man, I don't think this man needs a reason. I mean, there's history between both the fans and Kyrie Irving. Boston Celtics fans have a reason to be mad at Kyrie Irving, and Kyrie Irving has a reason to use that as fuel to put together a remarkable performance for us to see. Ultimately, the Boston Celtics were able to pull it off, but they were barely able to pull it off on their home court. So I can only imagine how hostile Game 2 is going to be and how much of an edge Kyrie Irving is going to come out with. Let me know what you guys think about this in the comment section down below. This is my favorite series of the first round. I said it in my video previewing this series. I'm gonna do my best to cover each and every series, but this one currently has my attention the most. Let me know in the comment section down below if there's any other series you'd like me to cover. Aside from that, I'm your boy Mike, and I'm dropping our mic until our next upload.